Yes, I help people. Typically, I focus on young married couples, but I do love helping solopreneurs and specifically single women because they seem to struggle quite a bit with getting things kind of organized and under control. Not all women, obviously, but quite a few. So that's what this is directed towards. This presentation is budgeting for the solopreneur. And your business side affects both your personal and the business. So we're going to concentrate on both. We're going to split our time there on both. So the first thing is that financial stress affects, if you have it on your personal side, that affects your business because it makes it more difficult for one to sell. It also makes you come across as clingy and needy, and it's just not a good thing to come across like that in a a professional setting when you are trying to sell stuff. And then vice versa, business stress or business finances impact your personal because that's where the income comes from, right? Your business. So these things interplay together. So a lot of times, people who are solopreneurs are typically, what I have seen, pretty good at actually making money on this side. And when they get this working well, then they make even more, which then fuels the personal side, whatever goals they have on the personal side. So, the other problem with financial stress is that it leads to risky money decisions. So, just a quick example for you when I was in 2007, my mom had emailed me on a Friday, and this was when I was working in insurance as a customer service and an agent, sales agent, and she emailed me on a Friday saying, "Here's your house. We're gonna get this at auction." And I was like, I totally ignored that email, and then she called me later on, and she was like, "Oh no, come in, check this out. I think this would be great. You can just take $3,000 earnest money out of your account and it'll be fine." And $3,000 was all I had at that time saved up. Anyway, the next day, I never even saw the house, never even toured the house, but the next day I bought a house at auction. And subsequently, through the downturn, 2008 recession, it was really hard to hang on to it. And I ended up having to rent rooms out of the house in order to stay in there. But all of that to say that if you're under financial stress, it often leads to very risky money decisions. So um, we want to stop that. So how I used to deal with my money, I would be like, oh, let me pay my rent, electricity, fuel for the car, food, heating bill, and then the balance would just go, to whatever. I never even knew where it went for the most part. This one for fuel and fuel for the car and food, I would just kind of like do that thing where you check your bank account balance, and then when things got really tight, I didn't even do that because I knew that it was probably in the negative. And so I would just let it continue in the negative. I had lots of bad habits a long time ago. Anyway, I didn't really have any kind of structure. And then the other problem with that is I didn't have any setup to set aside more money for taxes from the sales that I was making. And so it was just, a circular, big problem. And taxes, for setting aside taxes for a lot of solopreneurs is kind of the tough thing to do. So I was in my 30s. I wanted to save for retirement, but I was like, what? I can't do this. My debt payments were high. I was thinking about money every day, lots of financial stress. A small car repair would be like an emergency that was world ending. And like I said, I paid my bills and, swipe, swipe, swipe. No money. And then I did become salesy. And I think that is just a motive, that financial stress being always in the back of my head. So for me, getting out, well, it first started with a better job because I had lost my job during the downturn. And then I got back working again. And so for me, it started with anger. And it was anger because I finally sat down and looked at all of the monies that was going out towards debt. And so I decided to do something about it. So I had already taken Dave Ramsey's financial peace class and actually flunked out the first time. I didn't finish it, but I knew enough to get started. Um, Besides the anger got me started, but what I really, my deep why was I wanted financial peace. I wanted peace with my money. I wanted to be free from debt. I didn't want any more emergencies. I didn't want any more buyer's remorse. I didn't want any more roller coasters throughout the year. December holiday spending is super high, and then January is super low. So I wanted to get off of that financial roller coaster. I didn't want any more stress. And I wanted to finally achieve some of the financial goals. By the time we got paid off the house and we were totally out of debt, my retirement, because I really wasn't funding retirement when I was getting out of debt, my retirement was like $5,000. So I was like, 39 years old and $5,000. This isn't really going to work for retirement. So, and I knew that way back when I had started. So, and I also wanted to stop thinking about money every day. So everything kind of begins and ends with a plan for your money, aka a budget. So most people feel like a budget is prison. So if I tell my money what to do, then I have to stick to that. But really, what budgets do for you is they create the fences that you can roam within. So, for example, if you set aside $900 a month for groceries for the family, then you're not telling yourself that I'm not going to spend, $500. You're saying I can spend $900. And there's lots of tricks to being able to, without feeling like it's prison, being able to stick to that number that you have set for yourself. And we're going to talk about some of those. But really, what a budget does, a plan for your money, we want to redefine a budget to be intention, permission to spend. So if you give yourself permission to spend, then it doesn't feel like prison. It just feels like like, oh, this is what I want to do with my money. And you want to get to that as close as you can, that feeling. A lot of people don't want to do a budget or a plan for their money because it takes too much time and work. And it is true that it takes a ton of time to begin. But once you've begun it and you're on rinse and repeat and you have all the habits locked in, like right now, between my business budgeting, my personal budgeting, going to the bank, reconciling all the accounts, everything takes less than 2 hours a month. Less than 2 hours a month. So that it actually frees you up to spend more time on your business. In this case, a lot of people think budgeting is beneath me. So they think that the problem is just simply that they don't have enough money coming in, but that could be a problem. But really, what the problem is, and well, and that will also connect with, well, if I was a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, then I wouldn't need to budget. And so that if they do become a doctor or lawyer or whatever, they'll say, well, I don't need to budget. I make enough money, which is true. But back to that slide where the money just kind of fritters away, that happens no matter what income you're at. So Johnny Depp is a great example of this. In 2018, let me see if I can remember the numbers right. But he almost filed for bankruptcy. So Johnny Depp in 2018 was bringing in a quote unquote fixed income of $4 million per month. 4 million per month. That's what he was making. He was spending on fixed costs like mortgages and stuff like that, 2 million on fixed costs. Okay. He was spending $20 million a month. A month. Yes, this is crazy talk. right? He spent a bunch of money one month shooting the ashes of his friend over some kind of river by cannon. I can't remember. Anyway, that's okay that he wants to do that, but it probably would have made sense for him to come up with a plan like, here's what I want to do with my money this month. So it doesn't, my point is, it doesn't matter how much money is coming in. Being intentional with your money is never going to be a bad thing. And that's actually what real millionaires do. Oh, here's my thing. Yeah, 94,000 to buy his daughter a couch from the set of the Keeping Up with the Kardashians. 40 million to shoot the friends of his friend Hunter into the air from a cannon. 2.7 million a month on air travel. So these are just some of the things, like, it doesn't matter how much income you bring in. If you're not telling it where to go, it's going to be a problem at some point. So he almost had to file for bankruptcy. What he did instead is he sold some of his wine collections and some of his properties, blah, 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 and got back on track. But this is why we see people who win the lottery. I forget what the awful percentages are, but it's somewhere north of 70 or 80%. People who win the lottery are in the very same spot 5 years later, even if it is millions of dollars, because they just are like, woo, they just spend money. Okay. Another problem with budgets are, I call it a squirrel behavior. Here not, there not. So we feel like we can hide money from ourselves, but just like a squirrel, you remember where you put your nuts. Squirrels sometimes do, sometimes don't, right? But the thing is when an emergency happens, you're gonna pull the money from that, whatever that account is in. So it doesn't, you can't really hide money from yourself. So this is sometimes a behavior I see where people hide money from yourself, but really what you want to work on is the intentionality and the habits that go into that. So if your intention is to spend, $400 a month on fun stuff every month, then the habit that goes into that to make sure that you stick to that is maybe keeping track of the expenses or using a cash-based system, and we'll talk more about that. But there are habits that help you implement those intentions that help you stay there, instead of doing the thing where, like, oh, I'm going to put, there's actually a new savings thing called Acorn. I saw a commercial for it. So I thought that was funny because that's with the squirrel behavior here. So I'm just going to put it over this Acorn account and I'm not going to touch it. Well, I don't really find that people do that. Another example of this is the roundup things from banks. So they'll be like, okay, I'm going to spend $1.50 at the coffee store, right? 50 cents. The bank is going to automatically put that into my savings account. On average, what do I see happen? I don't see people actually saving that money. I see it going back into their account. So they transfer it out and then transfer it back. So it just creates all this extra work if you're trying to get your money on a plan. Okay. And then here's the biggest one for budgeting. Biggest reason why people don't budget when they're a solopreneur is I can't predict expenses, and the bigger one, income. Okay, so that is a real problem, but we're going to give you some tools to at least help you narrow it down so that you can still come up with a plan. The last reason is that people often don't have an accountability partner. So this is something that coaching can help with, or someone who is really good with money in your life. I'm naturally a spender. I'm not naturally a saver. My husband is naturally a saver. And so we work well together, and he helped me, especially when I was getting out of debt. So he looked at my expenses and was like, oh, Kim, you're spending 120. And this was back in the day when it was a BlackBerry. You're spending $120 a month on this cell phone bill. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. I was like, I need it. And he was like, well, can we find it cheaper somewhere else? And so then it prompted me to go look. So that's some of the things that an accountability partner can do. If you're a member of a mastermind group and they don't mind talking about more of the nitty gritty of the finances, a mastermind group can be a good group from an accountability on the solopreneur perspective, to bounce ideas off of when it pertains to the money. The other problem that I see is that people don't start with awareness. So they don't start with, what do I spend every month on gas for the car. So let me just share with you, people don't overspend gas for their car. People typically, I've seen it very rarely. Typically, people typically do not overspend on groceries either. I very rarely do I see people overspend on groceries. Usually, what happens when people overspend on groceries, they are entertaining a lot. And so then this goes back to the intentionality. So in that couple's case, what we created was a generous entertainment budget because they were entertaining people from their church and stuff like that, and they just really wanted, it was just part of their culture of their family to invite over, have some wine, that sort of thing. So we just put it in the budget so that they gave permission to do that. That's one of the things that you're going to find if you start with awareness, and I'm going to show you how to do it. If you start with awareness, then you can make decisions on whether or not that item, that thing is really important to you. So when I was getting out of debt, I recommend this on the personal side, grouping everything fun with the exception of large things like vacations, or maybe you're going to go see a concert or something like that. But everything fun comes out of pocket cash, just makes life easier. And so that's what I did when I was getting out of debt. And I went to Starbucks every day, literally every day, because it was important to me and I needed some relief. One of the things that I find with people and budgeting is that if they rubber band too hard, let's say they're way into spending or whatever, sometimes that will result in them being way too scorched earth. And then what happens is they give up because that becomes untenable in the long run. The goal is for you to always to have these new definitions of what a budget is, what a plan is, intentionality, permission to spend, and then making sure that you are evaluating what is important to you on a monthly basis. And it can change every month. So one of my clients, I just sent out a worksheet for everybody to do. What is your New Year's goals when it comes to your finances? What do you want to work on in 2024? And what large expenses do you see coming up that you want to put into the budget? And one of my guys, he got married last year, and he said, he didn't get a ring. They did it kind of quick, and he was like, I want to save for a ring. Well, that's like a new thing. So we're going to focus on that. So awareness, where you're starting is really important. Okay. So once you've done awareness, so first let me talk about the, how to do awareness really quick. So on the personal side, how you do awareness, I would recommend only doing 1 month. So December just passed. It's a great month to do because you'll get a twofer. You'll also find out what you spend for holidays and what the worst case food is, because a lot of times people are making holiday food, and that can add more money to the budget. So you look back at 1 month of expenses and you're going to look at your bank accounts, checking account, savings account. You're going to look at multiple checking accounts if you have them. If you are married, even if your stuff is separate, I would look at everything, right? You want to get a full picture of what's going on. The next thing is you want to look at the credit card spending for 1 month. Now that's a little bit more difficult because of how the statements work. I would say just, whatever statement was delivered in December, even though it'll have some November transactions on it, that's fine. You're just trying to get a 1 month synopsis of what money looks like in a month, and it doesn't matter what 30-day period it is, really. And so then you go through transaction by transaction and you categorize them. And there's an easy way to do this. If you are interested, I'll have the contact details in the chat for me, and I'll send you I believe I actually have a video on Loom on how to do it, so that you can do it using Excel, which takes maybe 45 minutes instead of like hours doing it by hand. So anyway, the result of awareness on the personal side is that you see what you're spending by category. You see what you're spending on groceries. You see what you're spending on restaurants / convenience / entertainment. That's usually a really high one. You see what you're spending on, Amazon. That's also another usually really high one. I wouldn't go into the depth of finding out exactly what those Amazon purchases are. I would just group them as Amazon so that you're not spending hours and hours doing this. You just want to get a general idea of where you're spending, what you're spending on. On the business side of things, that is going to be really important to look at. Now you might have better data because maybe you're using QuickBooks or something like that. So we'll talk about the awareness on the business side here in just a second. But before I get into that, on the personal side, I definitely use Dave Ramsey's method for getting out of debt, getting the budget under control. Because even if getting out of debt is not your goal, uh, the budgeting and all of those things work no matter what your financial goal is on the personal side. On the business side, this was a book I read last year, and it just made super easy to read, and it made really good sense. So what he says, this is on the business side, is that you want to keep your business expenses to certain percentages by topic. So we'll start over here. So this is the using awareness section here. And I just got to move my Zoom window pictures down a little bit. Okay, so on the business side, you want to look at your total gross receipts. Now, you could do this for a month, but you probably, if you've been using QuickBooks or some other thing for business accounting, you probably could do it fairly easy by year. So if it is easy, I would do it by year. If it's not easy, just looking at 1 month would be good. And I would pick the month where you have your most expenses so that it's a worst case scenario. So in that Profit First book, and he can explain more about how this works, I'll leave that up to Mike. But your goal is for owner's pay, that's you as the business owner, to be 50% of your gross receipts. You want your profit goal to be 10%. So this means you're putting aside 10% into a profit bucket where you can use for larger, maybe projects or something fun to do. He goes through several examples with profit. And then the last one is taxes, or the last two is taxes and expenses. So taxes is, if you don't know what percentage you should use, target percentage, I would just start with 15%, but your tax person will probably give you a better percentage. And then expenses is 25%. So those are the goals. So during awareness, you're looking to see how closely your expenses are lining up to these percentages. And if you have, I'll tell you right now, the one that everybody has way high is this 25% for the expenses section. A lot of times that'll be 50, 60, 70% of the gross receipt coming in. And that's where you're maybe not able to pay yourself, because we all know that the income produced over here funds all of this over here, right? So it's really important to first be aware of what you're spending by percentage. So take your gross receipts, and then you're like, okay, I paid myself, let's say your gross receipts are 100,000. Okay, I paid myself 10,000. Oh, that's a problem last year. And that happens a lot with owners. They'll sink more back into the business. Oh, I didn't save any money for my profit. My taxes, yeah, I'm behind a couple of years on my taxes, so I didn't do that. So where did everything go? Expenses. Okay. And then the goal on the business side is to try to work it back to these percentages. So you wouldn't do scorched earth. You would do it by a slow percentage. I would do taxes off the top so that you can stop that problem. But like the profit goal, maybe start with 1%. The expenses start slowly but surely getting rid of things that are not yielding enough income from them. The other thing that's really important from awareness on the business side is figuring out what your lowest gross receipt month is and what is your highest. The reason why this is important is because we all know business income affects our personal income. So on the personal side, what you would be starting out as a budget to is you're budgeting based on your lowest gross receipt month. So the lowest month where you didn't bring in much, and you didn't give yourself much from the business. So you want to know what that number is. And then you also want to know what is your highest. So on the personal side, once you figure those two things out, on the personal side, there's two ways to attack roller coaster business income. Way number one is to build a budget based on and we call this the base budget. So you would look back and see, what exactly do I spend on the four walls, basically, we call them. So what do I spend on food? What do I spend on utilities? What do I spend on shelter? So the basics, right? And then if the basics fit underneath your lowest income month from the business, then you're good to go. And on the business side, and maybe now you can look at, okay, there's the base. I got the base covered on my lowest business income month. I don't have to worry about that. Next, what you would do is you would prioritize your spending. So if one more dollar came in after these four walls of expenses, where do I want that money to go? And then you would prioritize everything else in your life that is really important to you. And then you would just simply say, okay, the next $100 is going to go into gifts, saving for the next holiday, thing, if that's the most important thing to you. The next $50 after that is going to go towards extra debt on my car so I can pay that car off. So you prioritize it. So that's one way to use your lowest income month from the business side to figure out how to budget on the personal side. Way number two, which is good if your income is fair, it doesn't go up or down very much. Way number two would be to just take an average. So if you get a lot of residual income, like I did with insurance, I had about the same average every month, and it would slowly go up based on, months where more money came in. It wasn't to the effect of, like, for example, real estate agents or mortgage brokers during the wintertime, they actually can go down to zero. And then during the summertime, they can go up to 100, 200,000. You know what I mean? Like, it can be that different. So in those cases where it's that much difference, what you want to build is called a hill and valley account. And this would be on the personal side. So a budgeting category that says, during my valley, during when I'm not going to have very much money, I'm going to pull for my valley from when I had a hill. So for example, if you're a real estate agent and in July, you're like, okay, I got $100,000 worth of income this month. I set aside my taxes. I do all the business stuff with it. Now, of that number, let's say I got 60,000 in my personal bank account from those monies, right? I'm just using it as an example. So then you're like, but I only need my budget, everything that I want is only 5,000 of that. So the rest of that money I'm going to put into an account for my valley in January. So then you would pull from that account to support your expenses in January. So it's called a hill and valley account, and really helpful when your business income varies by a lot. Okay. So that's a little bit about how the business feeds the personal. Now on the business side budgeting, like I said, you want to try to go towards these targets that he outlined. I do find that it works the best. He also, on the business side, recommends what they call balanced bank budgeting. So this means each of these, so he actually has 5 accounts. He has a tax account, a business expense account. These are actual bank accounts at the bank. And some of them he puts at different banks so that you don't touch them. I don't really agree with that part because here not, there not. But anyway, tax account, business expense account, profit account. I'm missing one. Oh, owner's comp. I totally missed that in this whole thing. So I'll have to add that back in. So if you during awareness, if you find out that you're not at these recommended percentages, you need to start working towards this. And the his system, or how he says to do it on the business side again, is to have an account where all of your income comes in, an actual bank account where all the income comes in. And then you're like, okay, 15%, and you transfer that over to your tax account. And then you're like, okay, my business expenses, I'm gonna, let's say you get $1,000 coming in, so 15% would go into your tax account, 25% of that thousand would go into your business expense account. Let's say you can only fit 1% for the profit account, that would go into another account, and then the 50% for the owner's account, that would go to another account. So you want obviously these numbers to add up to be 100%. So every income amount is being told what to do by these percentages. So that is the basics of how to set up the business side, and that Profit First would go into way more detail than what I can here. On the personal side, though, the best way to get started is probably just a paper budget. And again, if you want to contact me, I can send you a paper budget. It's a PDF. And the paper budgets are great on the personal side because they're easy to start, they're easy to understand. The problems with paper budgets is that you can't reconcile, and it also is missing sinking funds. So the idea on the personal and on the business for that matter, the idea is to take the roller coaster as much as you can out of the month. Obviously, you might not be able to take out the income roller coaster, right? But you can make some changes to that so it's not felt as much. But the expense roller coaster is what I'm talking about here. So we set up sinking funds on both the business side and the personal side. What is a sinking fund? It's simply something that you save for monthly that doesn't happen monthly. So, for example, in January of every year, we start saving for Christmas presents for December, right? We save for our car registration every year because that is paid once a year, but we save monthly. So we save 1/12 of that amount. We pay our auto and our homeowners insurance annually to get the discount. So right now, ours is due in September. Right now, we're just at 4 months. We have 4 months saved up in that sinking fund for future expenses for the car insurance and the homeowners insurance because you get such a good discount. So sinking funds help you save for things that they don't occur monthly, but you want to save for them monthly. And those are very difficult to do with a paper budget. The other thing that's really hard is missed transactions. So I got the okay from one of my clients to use this. This is from a while ago. You can see 2020, right before COVID. You can see his balance. This is his balance in his checking account. And then here's his paycheck. And then this was the expenses he was going to pay. And you can see that he has $461 left to budget. So the problem is that, where is it? Here's the buffer here. Oops, clicked on it. Here's the buffer right here. So what a buffer is, when we first started, he's like, I don't know what all's coming out of my account. This was before I developed the awareness thing. I was like, well, let's just put $25 buffer, and after a couple of months, you shouldn't be using the buffer. It should just roll to the next month. And so where did it go? Sorry. I gotta stop touching my mouse. And so here we are. This was over a year and a half after he started working with me, and you can see that his balance is $8.67. So a paper budget doesn't capture all of the transactions. And then last thing is, on the personal side, you don't want to check your bank account balance for what you can spend, because your bank account should have all of the sinking funds in it. It was driving me nuts. Sorry. Your bank account should have all of the sinking funds in it. And so your bank account balance won't be the correct amount that you can spend. It doesn't really tell you much. So paper budget's great for starting. It's actually really great for just sitting down with a spouse to plan, but it has its downfalls. The other downfall that it has, before I go on to the next thing, is that it doesn't allow for something in your pocket. So let's say you're at the Home Depot and you're like, oh, I know we need, filter for the furnace and we need, light bulbs and some other home repair type stuff. Well, the paper budget is sitting back at home probably. So there's nothing in your pocket that says, what do I have, in this, in my account for this particular type of spending. Okay. So paper budget's great to plan with, but not great for implementation. So I like to use YNAB. And if you guys are interested in learning YNAB, I have an affiliate link I can send you guys. And what YNAB does is it basically takes your bank account balance and it does what Mike suggests on the business side, it does on the personal side without having to have 100 different bank accounts, right? Because on the personal side, if you had a bank account for all these little sinking funds, it becomes very unwieldy. And then it's just like, it becomes more disorganized. So the worst number of accounts I've seen is about 12 checking / savings account. And she just was all over the place. She couldn't figure out what to do with her money. It became so complicated. So YNAB takes all of that. So you don't have to set up all these different bank accounts with YNAB because everything comes into YNAB from an income perspective and an expense perspective, everything goes out. And then YNAB categorizes everything. And because YNAB has your bank account balance in there as well, you can see how much you have set aside for, home repairs in the category sinking fund, and you can see what your bank account balance is to make sure that it's okay to spend the money. So if you are familiar with Russian dolls, YNAB basically takes Russian dolls. So the biggest doll here would be your account balance in your checking account. And then this could be like your emergency fund, it's all sits within this bank account, all these subcategories. But YNAB helps you realize how much you have in each separate one. So here's I think this next picture is a picture of YNAB. Here it is. So here's the account balance over here, and they do come in automatically. So the transactions will come in automatically so you don't miss anything. And then over here is the budgeting side, and we can see monthly bills, sinking funds, and this is a teaching YNAB, so it doesn't have any money in it. But you can see how it separates it out. This available over here would show you whether or not you had money in there to spend. YNAB also is in your pocket, and it also connects to your spouse. So both me and my husband have YNAB on our phones. So if either of us are out and about, it increases the communication because we already have a plan. We already know what each other is supposed to spend. So then there's no fighting. And there's no, usually if you are married, there's one person in the marriage that's like, where's that receipt for blah, 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 on the personal side. Maybe that's you in your marriage. So with YNAB, you don't have to do that because both spouses are reconciling and are adding their transactions in. Okay, how much time do I have left, Candace?
2 minutes.
Okay. So we'll have to save the rest of this for later because I do want to be able to answer any questions that you have.